All right, everybody, we're going live on YouTube and Twitter for this one. A tale of two halves for the Boston Celtics. They fall to the Oklahoma City Thunder 105-92. OKC riding a 15-game winning streak. This could have been a preview of the NBA Finals. We're going to get into everything here. Plus, got a Jimmy Butler fake trade coming up for you, as well as in or out or stat and stat of the week. All that coming up next here on Green with Envy. You guys know the deal. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. This is a post-game special after a matchup like the Celtics and Thunder. We didn't plan to necessarily go live, but as we're talking about, just had to do it. This game has a tale of two halves that we're going to dive into and try to give you all of our thoughts on it. But as you guys, if you're joining us here on YouTube or Twitter, talk through it with us, because that's what we're going to be doing here. This is a therapy session, so get your thoughts in the chat here. As always, this is your boy Will. We are checking in. How you doing? How you living? And joining me today, as he does each and every time, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, one and only Greg Manakis. Greg, I was watching the game with my wife Lorena, and first half it felt like this was going to be one of the best pods of the year. Second half, completely different vibe, big time different vibe in that second half. I know you kind of caught up to this game coming from a music session, but you ended up catching up right at the end of the game, so you got the full scope. Walk me through your thoughts and feelings on this 105-92 Thunder victory over the Celtics.
Well, it definitely felt like a big game. I think that's the first thing that really stood out to me as I was watching. I was on my couch, curled up in a ball, holding my knees the entire time. I didn't say one word. I was like barely breathing throughout the entire game, because you could feel how both teams knew it was like big stakes in this game. And it felt like the Thunder came out a little lackluster. They didn't really play to their identity in the first half. And it was one of those games where the announcers, shout out to Drew and Scal, but like they were kind of pissing me off in this one, because they were like acting like it was too easy for the Celtics, and that it was kind of going to be like Celtics walking away with this, when it was clear the Thunder were going to turn it on at some point. Sometimes that happens, in games where young teams coming out against champs like that, they just play a little tentative. I mean, you saw it in the NBA Cup, and Giannis was able to just dominate the entire game, whereas the Celtics in the second half, we just call it out right now, right? The Celtics 27 points in the second half just did not string together any semblance of a coherent offense in that second half. It was ugly. It almost felt like they thought, because the first half went so well, they'd be able to get a lot of the same looks. And then they start, playing a little sloppy, and they're not running back full speed in transition, lose some attention to detail. And before you know it, you lose by 13 points.
Yeah, this was a tough one, man. That second half especially was OKC, and this is something that I mean, the 27 points you mentioned, right? Like, that's just mind-blowing. Like, think about this. Celtics scored 35 points in the first quarter. Celtics scored 30 points in the second quarter. Both of those quarters were more than the entirety of the second half. This is something we've never seen happen to this team. And what I want to ask you, Greg, is how much of this do you think was self-inflicted versus how much of this was OKC, who is the best defense in the league on a historic pace? They talked a lot about their turnover differential between them getting about 7 more turnovers than they give up. How much of this is a credit to them versus how much of this is, and it's very clear, and I'm trying to download this and I'll have it ready here in just a second, is I was taking a look at the shot charts for the Celtics. When you look at the shot charts for the Celtics, it is just a dramatic difference first half, second half. I'll have that here in a second, but answer me that question, Greg. How much of this do you think was the Celtics approach first half versus second half? And then how much of it is just OKC being absolutely fucking relentless and just turning it up to another level in that second half?
I think part of it was OKC kind of sticking to their game plan of not letting the Celtics get any open 3-point shots. Like, I would love to see the amount of wide open threes the Celtics actually got in this game. It felt like most of the threes were contested. In the second half, the Celtics were 3 for 24 from 3. 3-pointers from Tatum, Porzingis, and Al Horford. He hit that right wing open
Yeah.
3-point shot. But, some other numbers from the second half, 10 turnovers to 3 assists for the Celtics. That's not a good assist to turnover ratio. But to me, it was like I said, like a little bit of a loss of focus in OKC, just like meeting the physicality of the Celtics in the second half. Just like more passes that felt like they were a half second late, or maybe 2 to 3 feet too long a distance to make the pass. Thinking about that early Tatum turnover where he tried to get it inside to, I think it was Horford maybe on a switch
Yeah.
in the second half, and I
That
think
in the
SGA
early
caught
KP
him away.
turnover is what stood out to me as well too. It was a pass where it was like when the Celtics are feeling themselves, you make that pass against Charlotte, all of a sudden you're like, oh, this game's a layup. But it's like, this ain't Charlotte. This is
Right.
OKC, and you just cannot lose that battle for them. And so, Greg, here, let me just pull up. Here's the first half shooting chart for the Celtics and what this looks like. And they shot 51% from the field, 23 out of 45. Second half, a lot of X's on that chart right there. That is
Yeah.
a
Especially in the
red
paint,
chart.
because if you look at the first
Exactly.
half, the Celtics got a lot of points in the paint.
Mhm.
I think they were somewhere around 30 points in the paint in the first half. In the second half, they probably less than 6. I mean, they didn't have a lot of points
They
to
finished
choose
with
from.
40 for the game. So yeah, so
Okay.
they were winning the battle convincingly in the first half of points in the paint. End up losing the battle of points in the paint, 42 to 40, and all of that
Mhm.
was surely brought on by that strong second half by OKC.
Yeah, and it's just like some bad numbers. Jaylen Brown had a pretty terrible second half after looking great in the first half. He was 0 for 7.
He's done this a couple
Um,
times this year, man. Great halves and bad halves that have just gone together. There was a game recently, I can't remember which one it was, but I know it was like, man, this is the worst half I've ever seen of Jaylen Brown. I think he had same thing where he had like 21 points in the second half, and it was like, who are these two different guys? But the impact he had in that first half versus the second half, where it, I'm not calling him, Tobias Harris, Andrew Wiggins, but there were times when we were like, I didn't really notice him on the court. I didn't really feel Jaylen Brown on the court in any meaningful way in that second half.
yeah, he doesn't disappear from many games, and he disappeared from this one pretty noticeably. Derek White, I thought, was great on defense in the second half. That block on SGA, where SGA got the block back
Yeah.
and made the baseline shot like that. Who blocks shots like that? Like only Derek White does stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he had 2 blocks and a steal, but he was 0 for 4 from 3, 0 for 4 from the field in the second half. Kind of a no-show again from Drew.
Yeah.
Didn't really
That's a
notice Drew
concern.
Holiday out there in this one, and no show
They
from
kind of
Peyton
picked on
Pritchard,
him
man.
too. Did you notice that they kind of went to the Drew Holiday matchup with, whether it was Jalen Williams or SGA, that they welcomed the challenge of Drew Holiday defending that, and the broadcast called that out as well too. That was certainly different. And just continuing to look at the Celtics offense here, something you and I talked about before going into the road trip was I was really curious to see the Peyton Pritchard ascent, how it does against some of these teams that are longer, more physical. Friday night in Houston, Celtics got away with not really having to, or at least they didn't have to face that, right? There was no Eason, there was no Thompson, Jabari Smith with the weird, breaking his hand and shoot around that morning. So that really kind of took away the intrigue of how does Pritchard deal with length and size and athleticism. Today versus the Thunder, didn't go great. Did not have a Peyton Pritchard game, and he only played 11 minutes. Played
Yeah,
under
that's
11
what I was
minutes, I
gonna
think.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that tells you all right there of the Joe Mazzulla saw it and was like, this is not the Peyton Pritchard day right now.
And there were like a few uncharacteristic moments from Pritchard as well. The Thunder have so many great on-ball defenders. Pritchard normally will get the ball, and like especially this year, he's so confident he's going to go at whoever's in front of him. And there was one really telling play where Tatum had the ball out of bounds, and they're coming up against full court pressure. And Pritchard has Kason Wallace on him, and he's kind of walking up, like not wanting the ball, going up the right side of the court. And Tatum's like gesturing to him, like, "Come get the ball, dude! Like you're running the show right now." And Pritchard goes and gets it, but he was like very tentative bringing the ball up the court. And I think he ended up with an opportunity for a left wing 3 that he passed up and ended up passing the ball to the corner, where it felt like that's a shot Peyton Pritchard going hard to his left, plant on that right foot, do that little dance back to the 3-point line and let that thing fly. And he just didn't shoot it. And you almost never see that out of Pritchard. He had that corner 3 opportunity that he passed up as Hartenstein ran him off the line, and he ended up like kind of flopping into SGA, who SGA was amazing. We're going to get to him.
Yeah, we'll talk about
but he was really good in this one, especially on defense. And Pritchard just didn't look like himself. Hauser couldn't get going. The Celtics, because there was such a size disparity, they went double big a lot in this game. Al Horford and Cornette played a majority of the minutes off the bench combined. 39 minutes from those two guys. So a lot of double big trying to take advantage of the Thunder's lack of size. But overall, I thought the Thunder, they stuck to their identity. They played like pit bulls, and they made the Celtics forget who they were in the second half.
This OKC team is relentless. And I know you watched some of that Knicks Thunder game from the other night as well, right?
Well, this is what I was saying. I can't remember if I said it on a pod, if we were texting, but every time I watch the Thunder, I think to myself, this is the best team in the league. Like, as much as the Celtics are the defending champs, right? But in my mind, when I watch the Thunder, they're just so hungry, and they're hungry for 48 minutes. Every single pass is contested. They're really smart on offense. Like, you saw some of their limitations on offense with the shooting. Lou Dort hits 3 threes to end the game and pretty much ice it. But the Celtics were living with certain guys shooting 3-point shots. That's going to be at the end of the year, like, who can they actually go to as the 8-man? Obviously, they're going to get Chet back. They're going to get Caruso back. So they weren't even full strength. And this was the second time this
that's going to be the point that I just mentioned that I was going to bring up is they just took out two of the top 3 in the East, but in very similar fashion, where they were down double digit at halftime against the Knicks, down double digit at halftime today against the Celtics. And there's no Chet, there's no Caruso, and they're still playing this way. Like, their depth, like, sometimes I think I might have mentioned this a while back. Like, there's kind of like your high end depth, and then there's having this roster depth. And sometimes I think we overvalue this roster depth where, like, I'll use Houston just as an example, right? They have like maybe 9 guys that I like, but are they really end of the game type of guys? The Thunder have about 8 to 9 true end of the game guys, and 2 of them didn't even play in this game. And they're on a 15-game winning streak in which Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein haven't even shared the court yet. They haven't had them as an option. And that was in that first half, when the Celtics were, they weren't being the 3-point team that everyone labels them as. That's all they do, right? Like, the Celtics got in the paint really well in that first half. And in that first half, to me, I was like, okay, this is finally the time where it really is evident that the Thunder missed Chet, right? Like, this is where there's not enough barrier of entry when you get to the rim, right? There's not a defense down there. And then the second half, they just find a way. They find a way to respond. They find a way to bounce back. And then that depth, getting back to this piece of it here, when you look at that versus the Celtics and you laid out kind of the minutes of the Celtics bench in this game, part of it, when I was watching the Tatum and that bench lineup, it could not hang out there with the Thunder. The Thunder had a mixture of starters and bench guys. And, typically that's an area where Tatum just kind of lifts the Celtics to a different level of whatever the other team can put out there. Especially with Pritchard not wanting the ball, not really being the factor out there. It was just Tatum and a couple of guys standing around waiting for Tatum to do something, and the best defense in the NBA just swarming to Jason Tatum and daring anyone to do anything else. And that was really a big momentum swing, it felt like, in that third quarter, when things at that point stalled and never resumed, from when we had that Tatum in the bench group and then just couldn't get anything back, even when we went over to the fourth quarter and brought back in some of the starters.
And, speaking about roster depth, right? The 4 guys that didn't play tonight: Kata, Springer, Tillman, Walsh. Do you see any of those guys being able to make an impact in a 7-game series against the Thunder?
No, not at all.
Right.
I see 0.
So we played the 9 guys that we think could make an impact in a championship series, right? Again, especially against this Thunder team, I would be shocked if the Thunder weren't in the finals this year. They're amazing. They're the best team I've seen in a long time. I mean, they've lost 5 games? Like,
they won 15 in a row. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, they're really good at basketball. So when you think back to the preseason, and we were talking about Lonnie Walker, like, could Lonnie Walker have made an impact in a game like this, is a question that was going through my mind, because there needs to be like one last piece, one last thing that you can go to, one last curveball that you can throw out there. And I don't know that any of those 4 guys that were on the bench tonight that didn't play could be that curveball, right? Like, Kata maybe is the one guy you're just like hoping that his sheer athleticism makes a difference against them, but that team's too fast for him. I think that game
And they're
would be
too
too
smart.
fast for him.
They all have high IQs. I just think you're asking for
I think
trouble.
he's the one. I think he's the one guy. Like you saw Jordan Walsh get a few opportunities with Jalen out. He's had some moments, but probably not.
Not really, to be honest. Like if we're being brutally honest about Jordan Walsh, has he actually had moments? He's had moments we can talk you into it because we're a podcast and we have to talk about the Celtics 2 to 3 times a week.
Right.
But in reality, he hasn't. And this is where, because when you asked me this, Jordan Walsh did jump to my mind. But this is where, in the moments that he's been out there, he's athletic. He hasn't used his athleticism as a weapon. And so I think if he's not going to do that, he doesn't have a chance in this type of game. He would need to find a way to weaponize his athleticism. And I think he plays a little bit too reserved. Maybe that's just what he's. Yeah. So I think I don't know. I would need to see more from him at this point. It's a definite no. I think if he were to get more opportunity and show something, I think because of the things that you've mentioned before, where it's like he can guard, he's supposed to be this crazy top tier athlete, right? Like that's supposed to be kind of his calling card. I think it could give him a chance. We haven't seen anything that says he's worthy of even sniffing the court in a game of this magnitude, where you said this game felt big, right? That was you just can't do it. He's got to earn his way there in the Pacers games and in the Pistons games and Kings games, so on and so forth. And so maybe, but that's a stretch right now. That really is a stretch to think. And so I don't know from any of those guys, especially in this series, right? Because we'll see on Tuesday night, Celtics play the Nuggets. We'll see if Tillman maybe gets a turn at, against Jokic, just like big body. I don't know if that's certainly not going to stop Jokic. I'll talk about him in a little bit, but like in this particular series, and that's the crazy part. Once again, no Chet, no Caruso for the Thunder. This was everything the Celtics have right now. And based on the CBA and the trade market and what the Celtics can and cannot do, I don't think anything else is coming. So I think this is what the Celtics have to work with.
So let's look internally at the guys who played though. Like Tatum could have played. I thought Tatum played well in this game. Like he's the one guy throughout the game where I felt good whenever the ball was in Tatum's hands. I probably wish he was a little bit more aggressive in that second half. He still took 11 shots, 4 for 11 in the second half, 1 for 4 from 3. I think he got to the lines 8 times as well, right? So that's pretty aggressive.
Overall,
yeah, pretty aggressive. Like you can't really argue with what Tatum did in this game. If you are, you're just like, I don't know, you're making mountains out of molehills, right? Porzingis probably could have inserted himself a little bit more dominantly on the offensive end. I thought he made an impact on both sides of the ball, though. Drew Holiday is probably the guy, right? 1 for 6 from the field. Didn't look for his shot. He was 0 for 4 from 3. He did have 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and he had a couple moments on defense, but he got picked on, as you mentioned. SGA is one of those guys. It's kind of like Siakam, where like SGA is obviously way better than Siakam, but they're just like kind of super unorthodox in their movements. And Drew has a hard time like using his physicality, which is his biggest strength.
There's a clip from, I don't know what podcast it was, but like he kind of described like the shiftiness and awkwardness of SGA without naming SGA as like the people that he likes to guard the least. And you actually, you saw Jaylen Brown was the initial assignment, right? On SGA as much as
kind of got cooked.
Yeah, kind of got cooked. And I feel like maybe I'm missing it. We didn't really have a ton of Jason Tatum on SGA, which I was a little surprised because maybe just maybe this is the gamesmanship of we know that we know that we could see you in the finals, and we don't want you to feel like you have an idea of how to attack this. But at the same time, you kind of want a little proof of concept to make sure that like 5-minute stretch that we got last season, because SGA's gotten better. He continues to get better. Like we'll see. We'll play them again in Boston down the road, so we'll see if we get it then. But that was something that surprised me that we didn't get a little taste of JT on SGA.
Yeah, and like, I mean, let's look at SGA in the fourth quarter. Let's just pull up those stats because like he definitely had moments, but he was struggling a little bit with the ball pressure. Yeah, he only had 3 shot attempts in the fourth quarter, 2 for 3, which is kind of crazy, right? He felt bigger than that. I think that has to do with the steal and the block. And
I was going to say that, and then the alley to Hartenstein. Like that's the play of the game, right? That's the moment everyone's going to take away, which unfortunately for Tatum is MVP on MVP crime, and he got the bad end of it.
Right. So he was 2 for 3 from the field, 2 foul shots. He didn't really get to the line. He got 8 times this game, but it wasn't like he was the foul merchant of death that he is. 7 points, 2 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, 2 turnovers. I thought he could have had a third turnover on that one pass that he threw out of bounds, but they said it got tipped by White when he was like
Mhm.
throwing the ball from
When
the
he's
baseline
doubled
to
in
the
the
top to
corner, yeah.
Hartenstein. Yeah, so like I can't really complain about the way the Celtics guarded SGA. I didn't really think he did all that much on the offensive side in the fourth quarter. His baskets are loud, but the shots were coming from other guys like Luguentz Dort. The Celtics were living with him shooting wide open practice walk-in three-pointers, and he was 3 for 3 on those.
Yeah.
Wiggins hit
0 of
that
8
28
before that. I
footer.
think we should note that. He was 0 of 8 before, and it's eventually, and that's just, and I meant think back to the first time. If you really remember the first time Lou Dort popped onto the scene, it was in the bubble, right? They were in that playoff series. I think it was the Rockets. Basically did the same thing. And this is a rookie Lou Dort. And I think he was something crazy, like 0 for 10 in like a game 5 or game 6 or something like this. And then he hit the
Mhm.
game winning 3 because he just doesn't. That's just kind of Lou Dort, right? Like he's gonna play tough.
Right.
He's gonna foul out of some games. He's gonna get into your head. You're gonna leave him open. He knows you're gonna leave him open, and he's gonna get streaky at certain points. And tonight it was to cap the game off. Happened to be when that flurry hit.
Yeah, and he's never going to stop shooting either, which is great for him. It's kind of that Marcus Smart confidence. But Jalen Williams, if you're looking at the negative side of them, this is another big game in which he didn't show up. 3 for 10 from the field in this one, only had 10 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 turnovers. Like he had a pretty bad game. And this is a recurring thing with the Thunder is Jalen Williams not showing up when it matters. But SGA being just call it what it is. He's the MVP right now. He's the
MVP right
front
now.
runner for MVP. The odds makers are putting it up there. He's got, as Drew called it out, he's got the minus next to his name. I was so impressed with him tonight, man. 33 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. What
He's
else do
just
you want from
composed,
him?
and like
Yeah.
to your point, where you're almost shocked that his stats in the fourth quarter weren't more. They were well spread out, right? With rebounds, assists, steals.
Mhm.
Like he did have, like I know you weren't saying they didn't have an impact, but when we look at just the stat line, you're like, man, his impact on the screen felt so much more. But like looking at the stat line, I'm almost like, man, how come you didn't have 13 points? But part of it's
Right,
just
right, right.
he's so composed in almost every moment. And yeah, I think the Jalen Williams point is interesting because that's probably my biggest reservation for them once you get to the conference finals, once you get to the finals. And I wrote down in my notes, Jalen versus Jalen. Like to me, and we don't have enough evidence of where Chet fits into this yet, which is the crazy part because he probably is their second best player, maybe third. I don't know. But the
Mhm.
Jalen versus Jalen part of this is, for J Dub, like it took Jalen Brown a while to really get to where he is and know how to be that number 2 to Jason Tatum. And when in certain select moments, all right, it's my game right now. Like in that first quarter, they very much had an understanding, like, Jalen's cooking right now. Jalen is the one that's going to dominate the ball. Like, and that's the way it goes sometimes with that balance. And I think with J Dub, he's still in his third year. Like, is he going to be ready for that in these moments? And so far,
Mhm.
the answer is no. But he is still like I've watched other games where he's been phenomenal, and so he has it in him. But it's just like, is he going to get there this year for them to win a championship? But I think right now the biggest takeaway from this game is just OKC is the team to beat. We're the champs, but
Mhm.
OKC is the team to beat for this particular season. And I'm just crazy impressed with how they've played over the last 15 game win streak. I'm just crazy impressed by them.
Yeah, the only thing I'd push back on is like definitively saying they're the team to beat is they were at home. Right? They were at home
Yeah,
in this game. See what it looks like in Boston, but I think
Celtics are a better road team than they are a home team.
all of their evidence shows that they are the team to beat this year. I would agree with that.
Yeah. So with this, before we leave this game, let's just go to our stats of the week here, because Greg, I know yours is just leveled into this game here because that second half, just to reiterate, 27 points in the entire second half, 35 points in the first quarter, 30 points in the second quarter, 15 in the third, 12 in the fourth quarter. Greg, just add on to this. I know this was just mind blowing to us as we were getting set to record here.
Well, I'm trying to see if Dick Lipe can do any of the research for me. Did he post it on Twitter? No, nothing from Dick Lipe. But The Celtics had 27 points in the second half. Since 2000, since the year 2000, the lowest scoring total game since the year 2000 was 53 points. So if you take the Celtics second half and you times it by 2, that's 54 points, right? So this is about as bad of an offensive performance as a team could get in a game. The Celtics were, I mean, they were made to look like a JV team in the second half. And you don't see that very often with a team of the caliber of the Boston Celtics with as many weapons as they have. OKC Thunder holding the Celtics to 27 second half points is my stat of the week.
Yeah, that's just mind blowing, man. It was, even as I was watching, I think at one point you texted one of the group chats where we were like, Celtics have 20 second half points. Like I immediately had to go to NBA.com and I was like, they can't be right. I know we had 15 in the third. It's like halfway through the fourth quarter. We have to have more than 20 points. And I think finally Horford hit that wing three and it was like, okay, we have 23 points. And like it is just unfathomable to think of this team. I mean, how quickly do the Celtics sometimes score 27 points? Like, let's just think about that. There's some
like
games
you said,
where
they had 35 and 30 in the first quarter and second quarter in this game.
Just mind-blowing stuff from the Thunder against the Celtics today. And yeah, that's going to be one that sticks out for quite a while. So definitely have to look forward to the rematch with OKC, which, as you mentioned, Greg, that will be on our home court. So we'll have to see how that one goes. For my stat of the week, I'm actually going to look ahead to the Celtics next game. So we've talked a lot about this being a treacherous 4-game West Coast trip for the Celtics. Get the win in Minnesota shorthanded, get the win against Houston shorthanded. Today, obviously, fall in the second half to the Thunder. Coming up is the Nuggets. And the game today was kind of looked at in the same way that the matchups the Celtics and Nuggets had last year, where it was, the NBA world was tuned in because they're like, this probably should be the NBA Finals preview, right? And those games that we played against the Nuggets last year had just this really, ultra big aura around it, right? And you could feel it watching those games. And so the Nuggets, they've been a little bit up and down at times this year. They're 4-1 in their last 5. Just had a pretty epic back-to-back with the Spurs here, with Wemby and Jokic just being all sort of types of special, just insanity. But I just wanted to read to you Nikola Jokic's last 5 games, just to give you what his stats are coming into this. So in his last 5 games here, he's playing 37 minutes a game. He's shooting 49% from the field. He's shooting 42.4% from 3, which is actually down from his season average for the most part. It's been around 50%, so maybe a little bit of a slump for him from a 3-point range. He's shooting 85% from the free throw line. He's averaging 36.6 points, 15 rebounds, 10.6 assists, and 1.6 steals with only 2 turnovers per game.
And we're calling SGA the runaway MVP. Like, it's crazy.
This is what I'm saying. This is insane. Like, that's crazy. And I don't. Did you catch any of the Jokic Wemby moments over the weekend?
Just highlights.
Yeah. I didn't catch the most. I didn't really catch any of the second game. That first game in which the Spurs won, Wemby and late double team from the Spurs, really good double team. They caused a turnover from Jokic to end that game. And the funny thing was, everyone was like, man, Wemby really kind of stuck it to Jokic. He was like 15 of 36 for like 42 points and 20 rebounds. Yeah. And it was like, man, Wemby's a real problem for Jokic. Like, that's the type of shit we're on heading into Denver here. And so, yeah, the league is at a time where the fact that I just listed off those stats, like you said, somebody else that we just played, we're saying is the MVP. And as much as we love Tatum, this is where Tatum, it's not going to be worth too much effort trying to push the Jason Tatum MVP agenda. As much as I love Jason Tatum, he's destined to be at best third. Like, there's just no path, I think, to him getting
third. He's third.
There's no path to him getting above
above
Jokic. And yeah, I was like, because Giannis is in here too, but the Bucks struggling again. So, maybe he'll get to that 3 range, but he ain't getting up to the SGA Jokic range. It just kind of is what it is. But looking forward to that one Tuesday night.
Real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Some quotes from post-game. Joe Mazzulla says they took advantage of our poor spacing and our poor screening in the second half. Those are the 2 biggest things. Also called out Lou Dort defense and his defense on Jaylen Brown. He said that was a big reason why Jaylen struggled in the second half. Porzingis, he said that once they turned it up a little bit the Celtics just played stupidly. That's kind of what we were saying. You know, a lot of the passes that they were making, they just like weren't locked into the details there. So just some quotes that I found, courtesy of our girl Noah Dalzell. She had some quotes from the press conference there.
Yeah, so that's good to hear. That's kind of lining up with what we're seeing out there, and I think gives them some, because it really felt like coming into this game, I had a few friends text me who were like, "Man, Celtics look really good," and we came off a very average December, and then they beat the shit out of the Raptors to end the month, and then they came out to the West Coast and got big win against Minnesota, big win against Houston. Defense looked re-locked in, and it felt like, especially through this first half, it's like, all right, Celtics are officially fully back. And then OKC, just new kids on the block, just really punked them in the second half.
Celtics defense was good in this game, man. Celtics only allowed 105 points.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I think and like you said, they challenged, which was a fair strategy against the Thunder, who shoot kind of a middling amount of threes, make a middling amount of threes. They're not like the greatest 3-point threats in the world. Make Lou Dort, make Kason Wallace hit threes. Like, that's going to be a part of the game plan. So interesting to see how the Celtics bounce back on Tuesday. They'll be taking on the Nuggets. We'll have some coverage of that game for you, whether it's right afterwards or if we have a podcast the day after. We'll have something for you on that game. No doubt too big for us to miss. With that, we're going to transition here to our last segment of the show here. We're going to go into in or out, of which I am going to actually steal the segment here and turn this into a Jimmy Butler fake trade segment. The Heat are collapsing. It's beautiful to see. They're just descending into madness and chaos, and I love every minute of it. But I do think Jimmy Butler is a guy that can have a real impact somewhere where he goes, despite all of his, let's just be honest, this bitchiness. Like, can a situation ever end with Jimmy Butler well? I think the answer to that, we all know, is no. But I do think it's kind of fascinating where he could end up with his contract. So I'm going to propose a trade that I have here for Greg. And if Jimmy Butler's not traded by the next time we record, we're going to flip these roles. Greg's going to propose to me a trade for Jimmy Butler because it is going to get complicated. So with that, Greg, I kept it as simple as I could for this one. And this is where I think it makes the most sense. It sounds like, as Brian Windhorst actually just came out with a report right before we went on, that the Suns are the most active trying to get Jimmy Butler. Unfortunately, they have a little thing called Bradley Beal on their roster who has a no trade clause. So good luck to you on that one. Anymore. Yeah, so good luck on finding a way to make that work, because the Heat have already said they have no interest in Brad Beal, as they shouldn't. So good luck finding a third team to make that happen where Beal will actually waive his no trade clause. So for this, there's one team that doesn't seem to be interested, but I think they should be. I think it's the Houston Rockets, who the Celtics just played on Friday night. So I've got two versions of this trade, Greg. I'm going to throw the first one out to you, and this is the one that I think would be preferable, probably for the Rockets, maybe not so for the Heat. But let's send Jimmy Butler to Houston, and in return, we have Fred VanVleet, Tari Eason, and let's call it 2 first-round picks. Don't really worry about the picks. We can haggle over. Other people can haggle over the picks, 1, 2, 3, whatever it is, but a couple of picks. So Fred VanVleet, Tari Eason, plus some picks to the Heat. Jimmy Butler to Houston. Your thoughts?
I mean, Jimmy Butler has tanked his value, so I think that's well below what Jimmy Butler's actual value is. But the fact that he's done what he's done to the Heat and pretty much blew up the entire organization at his press conference the other day, the Heat are going to take what they can get, I would imagine, for him, and they're going to get some cap relief because Fred VanVleet, I think it's a team option next year. It might be a player option, but I think it's a team option. It's a player option?
I'm double checking right now. I think it is a team option.
Yeah, I think it's a team option. So his contract, that's like $40 million, will go off the book. So Tari Eason's a nice player, fits into Heat culture, a couple picks. I think the Heat might have to settle for something like that just because of how toxic it is. And they don't want Jimmy Butler, the cloud, the dark cloud that is Jimmy Butler's tears, ripping apart that organization for much longer.
Yeah, and I think for Houston, he just kind of seems like he lines up with it is a team option. Like he does line up with an Ime vibe, right? Maybe hopefully not off the court, but at least on the court, and it feels like that would be kind of a match made. And I was talking to my buddy Ross, who's a big Rockets fan, and I love watching. The Rockets are one of my league pass favorite teams right now. But their end of game offense, and when they're off, when Jalen Green doesn't have one of those games where he's going off, man, it is just tough to watch.
Can you imagine the Rockets trying to get a shot off against this Thunder team in a playoff series?
Exactly. I mean, and even with Jimmy, that doesn't look very promising, but it gives you a better shot because it is really disgusting down the stretch. Now, like you said, his value may have been diminished to the point that trade works. I don't think that's a great return if you're in Miami, because Fred VanVleet, what are you going to do when he's coming off the books? It's kind of, it's more cap space. Tari Eason fits into whatever's remaining of Heat culture, and then you get a couple of picks. The other scenario that I had for you here, which would be an alternative return for Miami that I think might appeal to them more, but you tell me. So this would be, instead of sending out Fred VanVleet and Tari Eason, let's take them back, and let's send out Dylan Brooks, Steven Adams, and then it would be either or Jabari Smith or Amen Thompson plus pick or two. You kind of figure out the picks. That would be what I would assume Miami would be looking for, and then I think they have to throw in that Swedish guy. What's that? Larson, whatever, Peloton Larson. Throw him into the trade.
Because Tari Eason's a role player, right? Tari Eason's a role player. At least if you're getting back Jabari or you're getting Jabari or Thompson, you have star potential, right? Maybe not all NBA potential, but borderline all-star potential. And I think giving up Jimmy Butler, who led you to 2 NBA finals, you probably want at least some glimpse into your future there. And the Heat, I mean, they could always trade the draft picks, but it's going to be tough for them to trade Jimmy Butler for Fred VanVleet and who's it? And Tari Eason, right?
Yeah, it was VanVleet and Eason.
Yeah, I just don't think that can work.
Yeah, getting for them, if they're going to do business with Houston, they probably have to get, as much as you may love, I really like Jabari Smith. I think he gets a little bit underrated. I was disappointed that we weren't able to see him against the Celtics. Him and Amen Thompson feel like at least one of those guys has to be in the deal with some picks for Miami to really consider making this move, because I think there's a world in which Pat Riley's so fucking stubborn, he might just be like, all right, I didn't get any of the deals I like. Jimmy, just stay home for the rest of the year, and it's on you. You pick up that player option, fine. We'll relook at the trade market. Don't pick it up, cool. We got cap space. We'll see you later.
Yeah,
like that's like if there's anybody that's willing to do that, it's Pat Riley. Yeah, it's Pat Riley. Pat Riley is probably more than willing to do that. But yeah, I think that for me is the easiest, most obvious option, and especially where both of those trades don't really take away from the Rockets' future. I think it makes a little bit of sense, but I also, if you're the Rockets, you're like, we kind of like our culture. We know we're not going to win anything this year, but we just want to get experience and we'll figure it out in the offseason. Like, I don't think that's a bad idea either. So, we'll see. I'll be interested to see what you come up with if Jimmy Butler is not already traded. If he's already traded, obviously, we'll discuss that. But if he's not, I'm excited to see what you come up with here. But Greg, I think that's going to do it for this episode here. Rough second half of the Celtics against the Thunder, but chance to bounce back in a very big way against the Nuggets team. We'll get to see Nikola Jokic, Russell Westbrook, the starter. We'll see which version of Jamal Murray shows up. Then we're going to be a really interesting game here on Tuesday. Before we leave the folks here, anything specific other than just dealing with the greatness of Nikola Jokic? Anything specific that you're looking for in that matchup?
No, but I am looking forward to a year without Gerard Mayo. Peace, brother.
Yeah, no number 1 pick for the Celtics. Thanks a lot for nothing, Gerard Mayo. Yeah, for the Patriots. Thanks a lot, Gerard Mayo, for that week 19 or week whatever it is now in the NFL win on the way out. That's going to do it for us. We will catch you guys later. Celtics Nuggets Tuesday. We will have a breakdown for you guys following that game. Make sure you follow us, subscribe, yada, yada, yada. You guys know the deal. Peace, love, respect. Catch you guys later. Deuces.